Greetings, Normalites, students, family, and friends of Alabama A&M University. My name is Eddie Davis Jr., historian and biographer of Dr. Councill. Today, I would like to give you a quick legacy moment and look into the past of our dear founder. In 1848, Dr. Councill was born into slavery in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Councill's father, his mother Mary, and 3 other brothers would all be forced to bear the burdens of slavery in the South. Councill's father would escape the chains of slavery and made his successful passage to Canada. Although he made many attempts to return for his family, he was unsuccessful. Financial issues occurred on the plantation, causing his family to be fractured and be sold to other slave traders. 2 of his older brothers will be sold, never to be heard from again. However, Councill, his youngest brother Cicero, and mother Mary, they would be taken to Richmond, Virginia, where slave traders would later take them here to Huntsville, Alabama. Upon arrival, Councill and his family would be purchased by the Madison County Judge, D.C. Humphreys, where they would continue that slavery, the burdens of slavery, as they toiled the cotton and corn fields of the South. They would do so up until Union troops occupied this part of Alabama a few years before the closing of the Civil War. The Civil War is over, slavery is abolished, and Dr. Councill is free. Throughout the South, there were many schools that were popping up to help liberate and educate the minds of the former slaves. And many of these former slaves would run toward these opportunities. Councill and his youngest brother Cicero would be no different. In Jackson County, Alabama, there was a school known as Averyville, will be the school where Councill and his brother would attend. Upon arrival, and after a few lessons, Dr. Councill was deemed as a keen student and would be one of the standouts. After 3 former years of education, Dr. Councill would become one of the teachers, helping to educate his former peers. Now seeing this Black educator alongside white men and women, along with Northern resources to help educate this freedman village, became too much for the locals in Jackson County. And it prompted rise in the Ku Klux Klan, who terrorized the village, burning down their churches, shooting inside their homes, and even burning down their prized possession, which was their school. With constant toil and constant violent acts at the hands of the Ku Klux Klan, caused Dr. Councill and his family to move from the Jackson County area, and they would return to Huntsville, where Dr. Councill would establish the very first school for Blacks in Madison County in 1869, known as Lincoln School. It was this school that would lead to the infant seeds that we see today as Alabama A&M University. Apart from being an educator, Dr. Councill was also a politician. He believed that a sustainable education for freedmen Blacks had to have a political element that was rooted in funding or resources from the legislature to assure a sustainable financial future for educational institutions. Apart from his political involvement, Dr. Councill was an author who published many books. He was editor-in-chief of his own magazine known as the Herald, and he would be a known orator who would lecture across the country. He would receive international fame as he lectured at the Columbian Exposition in Chicago. Afterwards, which he would receive invitations to speak internationally before Great Britain's Prime Minister William Gladstone and King Leopold II, King of Belgium. Another unknown factor of Dr. Councill is his civil rights involvement and pioneering. In 1887, Dr. Councill bought a first-class ticket to ride a train traveling from Alabama to Tennessee and over to Georgia. This was 6 days after the federal government established the ICC, or Interstate Commerce Commission. This is the country's first regulatory agency that protected passengers while traveling over railways. It not only created processes and protocols to protect passengers, but it also, its original intent was to protect farmers. Farmers would ship their produce along railways. And at that time, there was no proper way to say how much it cost to ship one item as opposed to the next. So this gave the ICC regulatory authority to provide some consistency to farmers primarily, but it also gave all passengers somewhat or some level of protection as they travel over these railways. Where Dr. Councill, he purchased a first-class ticket and he expects to receive first-class accommodations. He's sitting in the presence of white men and women. And immediately as he takes his seat, he's approached by one of the men who work for the railroad and demands that Dr. Councill remove himself and sit into the colored section. Where Councill immediately shows him his first-class ticket and says that he demands and he should receive first-class accommodations. Where the man leaves Councill's presence and they return with about 4 or 5 of them. Again, they demand that he leave first class and sit into the colored section. A second time, Councill refuses and shows the proof of him, the proof that he needs to, that he should be allowed to sit in his current seat. Without a third warning, one of the men carrying a lantern just strikes Councill across the face with a lantern, and blood began to rush from his brow. Councill begins to fight like a raged lion. But unfortunately, 1 man against 4 wasn't a contest, and they throw Dr. Councill into the colored section, where he would later tend to his wounds and get off the train prematurely from his destination. At this time, he's also a lawyer and attorney. He would begin to work up charges against the federal government for not being able to properly regulate him as a passenger while traveling over the railways. Months would go by. Dr. Councill would attempt to bring these charges to the federal government's ICC, but and would have a nice hearing. Although the federal government didn't bring charges to Dr. Councill, they did change the ruling that says if any passenger, black or white, purchase a first-class ticket, they must be treated with equal and fair accommodations. This was a momentous gain for the cause of civil rights. Matter of fact, it was this hearing before the ICC that created the doctrine of separate but equal 9 years before the Plessy versus Ferguson court case. It would definitely be a prelude to that, and for the fight towards the cause of discrimination, specifically when riding over trains. And for that, we must thank Dr. Councill. Being an educator in the South, attempting to speak truth to power, and also walking the tightrope of diplomacy while trying to balance and manage it all, it became too much for Dr. Councill to handle, which ultimately led to his mental and physical demise. At the time of Councill's death, he wasn't even sure if his school would survive. He fought and sacrificed and did every possible thing to secure resources and funding for the viability and sustainability of his school, only to be met with an array of no's, rejections, and negative opposition. But 145 years later, the school today known as Alabama A&M University is still alive, still well, still vibrant. However, during this weekend, I solicit you to give back in time, talent, and treasure so that we can build upon the strong legacy that our dear founder, Dr. Councill, laid before us. It is because of his efforts we actually have a homecoming to come home to. And although we're doing things virtually this year, I ask that you would give to the giving campaign so that future generations will have the benefit that we did as we matriculated here in our undergraduate years. And it's up to us that we continue to provide resources so that our legacy will be here for another 145 years. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And long live thy fame.